guys will get. Well, thank you for coming this evening, everybody. How are we doing? We're good? Good. So my name is Ryan Clark. I'm the editor of The Post. Very excited to introduce our speaker here tonight, Mr. Gregory Moore, who is the editor of the Denver Post. He's been the editor since 2002, and during about those dozen years, he oversees everything in the newspaper, as well as online, except for the opinion content. He's been in the newspaper business for about 36 years, and an editor since 1983. Mr. Moore joined the Post after a 16-year career at the Boston Globe. He's served in a variety of editor positions. The last 8 years were as managing editor. He graduated from Ohio Wesleyan University in 1976, where he had a degree in journalism and political science. He began working in Dayton and also this morning with his hometown newspaper in Cleveland. Mr. Moore is also he's also a member of the Ohio Wesleyan Board of Trustees. He's also been with the American Society of News Editors. He's completing a 9-year term on the Pulitzer Prize Board and serves as its co-chair. During his almost 12 years as editor of the Denver Post, the newspaper won 4 Pulitzer Prizes, 2 for photography, editorial cartooning, and breaking news. Mr. Moore and his wife Nina have 2 daughters, Jasmine, who is 11, and Jaden, who is 9. And his son Michael Langston Moore, who is 30, lives in Boston. I had the pleasure of spending some time with Mr. Moore yesterday, and I learned a great deal from him just in that short time, so I'm really excited to have him here tonight. Here to speak with Mr. Moore is Josh Jamerson, who is the local editor of The Post. They'll be talking about the newspaper business and some of the many things I think we can learn from Mr. Moore. I'd like to thank Justice Hill, SPJ, and the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism for making this event possible. And without further ado, Mr. Gregory Moore, everybody.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Welcome to the Scripps. Welcome to you. Welcome to Athens. Good to have you. And I wanted to start this conversation off with, besides the fact that we probably all want to be where you are in a certain amount of years, is that we are all products of journalism school. And that's what I wanted to do. Good time at Ohio Wesleyan. A lot of Scripps students here are involved in extracurricular activities. And I want to talk to you about what you think of doing both, because speaking from experience, it seems like you can kind of learn the theory in the classroom and really put it to work. What do you look for me as an employer?
Okay. First, from Ohio, as you all know, as I was saying in my many sessions here over the past day, a little bit more than the past day, I visited all the major campuses in Ohio except this one. And so I'm so happy to finally get a chance to come here. We have a beautiful campus. I understand now why so many of my classmates came to OU back in the 70s. I heard a lot about it, and it's really lived up to its billing. And I enjoyed meeting with the students and the faculty. I'm really impressed with the journalism majors here. You guys really take it seriously. And you give me a great part about the future. So that's all been a really, really positive experience. I'm leaving at 7 o'clock, which is 5 o'clock my time. It's been quite an adventure, quite a visit. And Justice, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for everybody for your hospitality. So, your question. What I look for, honestly, is I like captains of team sports. I like people who have started clubs and started activities and led organizations and movements, people that have created things and finished what they started.
Taking that initiative.
I look for leaders, basically is what I'm saying. I look for leaders. I think there's a base level of assumption about talent and about skill. And I also believe that, if you come work for us, that we're going to be able to help you improve and be able to teach you the things you need to know to be a accomplished journalist, but you can't really teach leadership. You can't really teach the willingness to care about your fellow human being. And so those are the kinds of things that I look for in interviews. I usually ask people, why do you want to be a journalist? And as I was saying to the OU AJ NABJ group, if you say it's because I like to talk to people, so like, then why don't you be a greeter at Walmart? I mean, that's really all that it's about. It really needs to be about, sort of contributing to our democracy, helping to, bring about constructive change to improve people's lives. That's what journalism has the power to do, just like being a doctor or being a politician or being a lawyer. It's a profession, and heart and passion really means a lot. So I look for heart, passion, and leadership.
And I like what you said about the willingness to care about human beings. So what does that have to do with journalism?
Well, I mean, if you are, writing about a community that you're a part of, if you're writing about conditions of, the powerless or that kind of thing, which generally tends to be what journalism is about, though cliche, afflict, comfortable, and comfort afflicted, then it is about people. It's about communities. It's about holding institutions accountable for doing the things that they are supposed to do, which is to care about the Commonwealth. That's really what it's about. So everything's a people business. The journalism itself is about people, and as leaders in our industry, it's not about stories. It's about people that do the stories, and figuring out what it is that they care about, and using their talents and their interests and their skills to do the best journalism possible. Without passion, you can't do good journalism.
How much of that do you think is attributed to being brave enough to ask those questions and be that?
Well, the funny thing, that's a good question. Most journalists are, not to overgeneralize, but most journalists are, they're introverts, really. They really are. They really don't, like all the attention. And it takes great courage for them to stand up at a press conference and ask President Clinton, did you have an affair with Monica Lewinsky? They're introverts, and what journalism gives them the courage to do is to ask really tough questions, actually to be a little bit different than what they really are in private. So I think that obviously it takes courage to be intrusive, to ask tough questions at vulnerable moments for people, and then to do the kind of heroic journalism like war coverage. Those journalists are intrepid. I've lost friends who covered the war in Iraq. It's people who are covering the drug war in Mexico. Mexico is some of the most dangerous ground in the world to cover a news story. I mean, it's not a joke. And so it takes courage, it takes great bravery, and a commitment to informing the public that, you just don't see that kind of selflessness in a whole lot of other professions. I think it takes a great deal of courage to be a journalist.
So being that we as students have to do journalism to actually kind of get that on grading for ourselves, what value should we be placing on internships, whether they're paid or not paid? What value?
Yeah, everything's not about money, but I do think you should get paid if you work. I really do. I don't get a free thing. I don't understand that. I think that perhaps if you have a financial means where money doesn't mean anything, you can volunteer to get that experience. But I think if you work for a major corporation, you should get paid. But, money aside, I think internships are great. When I started, I had an internship after my sophomore year, I had an internship after my junior year. And that really cemented my desire to be a journalist. Watching other professionals, sitting next to them. I remember actually sitting on the campaign bus when Governor Gilligan was running. And I actually had a photo of myself when I was 20 years old. I had a big afro, wearing a turtleneck, had on a nice suit, and sitting right next to the main reporter from the Akron Beacon Journal who was covering the campaign. That was my first time on the bus. And it just transformed everything for me. And as I was saying to some of the students earlier today, I think I really, really knew I wanted to be a journalist when I was in the newsroom back in 1974, August. And that was when basically you had one television hanging from the ceiling and everyone crowded into the newsroom to look at one television, no cell phones, none of that stuff. And President Nixon did this historic wave goodbye as he resigned the presidency. And I said, there are two reporters that did that. That's Woodward and Varsity. I want to be those guys. And I remember my professor said, you know, you got stardust in your eyes. And they were called the Stardust Twins. And I did, and I still do. And, you know, it's not that I'm trying to be difficult or I want to be anti-authority or I want to, you know, be a contrarian. But I do want to hold the powerful accountable. I do want to make, you know, a difference with the journalism that we do. We put a premium on doing public service journalism at the Post. You know, we've written a lot about parole and the difficulty of putting people in solitary confinement. We've written stories about kids who died through the neglect of the human services system. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to make a difference. And the government has spent millions and millions and millions to make the system work the way it should. And I think that happened because of the journalism that we did. I think we made a huge difference, and I'm proud of that.
Kind of following up on that, being an editor of a major, one of the largest papers in the country, being newspapers.
Well, it used to be one of the hardest things in the country, yeah.
But being in newspapers so long, it's even changed. We've got to see a very short glimpse in newspapers, and it's a very weird time, as you know. I guess I wanted to ask you, do you think newspapers are dead, or do you think we hear things from different people?
So I was talking to Dr. Suttis here, who's I worked with, you know, early in my career. I've known him for like 30 years. We were talking about sort of what the future, you know, holds for our profession. And I remember at the end of my note, I said to him, you know, we were a part of the golden years. I'm just so happy that I experienced journalism and money was not an issue, when resources really weren't an issue. All that mattered really was the story. In the end, I don't think it really matters that much whether newspapers survive. I think what really matters is whether journalism survives. And I think that's what the fight is about. The fight is about, you know, whether or not the ability to verify information, whether or not facts continue to matter in our society is really what journalism is about. And that's what I'm fighting to have survived. I'm you know, to use the cliche, I'm agnostic about the platform. I don't care if you get it on a phone, I don't care if you get it on an iPad or a desktop or a watch or a Google iPad or whatever. I only care that people are still moved to try to change things based on the facts that they're given. And are they? Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, we can debate what we think about Snowden, whether or not what he did is, you know, the ultimate in patriotism or being a traitor. You can argue about that however you want, but he's changed the disclosures that he brought about. They've changed our society. You know, I mean, just put the focus on surveillance and collecting information and issues of privacy in ways that I think matter. And now it's going to be decided by the Supreme Court. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be something that happens in a dark room in secret. It should be something that's disclosed that we get to decide what kind of society we want to live in. And, you know, those disclosures happen because of, you know, the very journalists willing to take on the government to disclose something that, you know, a citizen felt was important. I think that's really what journalism is about.
So, if you can, we always hear about what you can do on the internet, with an iPad, or something like that you can't do in a newspaper, and how newspaper becomes dated or a breaking news story, or when you want something needed to your phone. What do you as opposed to the newspaper that you can't do online?
Well, it's really, you know, can't line a bird cage with a iPad.
It'd be expensive,
You know, So we're engaged in all forms of communication in a very exciting way. So the Broncos lose the Super Bowl, and we're still able to sell 4,000 books, looking at an incredible season that Peyton Manning had. We produce e-books on gardening and skiing and photos of the year. I mean, we are teaching those skills to our journalists. We won 13 or 14 Emmys. Last year we won, 3 RTV and A awards. I mean, more than any other television station in Denver. So we're doing a whole lot of different things on a lot of different platforms and getting our journalism seen by more people than ever before, maybe in our combined history. Okay? So it's a pretty exciting time, and our impact and our influence is greater in some ways than it's ever been. But our philosophy with the newspaper is that we're not in the business of telling you stuff that you can't find out sort of anywhere else. I mean, that's what our digital online operation is for. Is we do breaking news, and we do it very, very well. What we try to do with the newspaper is put together something that's interesting. We try to assemble an interesting take on the world. It's not, based on our own opinion or biases or anything like that, but we try to do a really great job in the newspaper on narrative storytelling. We try to put together things that will surprise you or inform you. And I think the best newspapers are the ones where you pick it up and you go, I was thinking about that, and now I know about that. The Wall Street Journal for a long, long time was really, really good at that. I used to have a stack of Wall Street Journals that I didn't get a chance to read, and before I threw them out, I would sit on the kitchen floor and go through and go, wow, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that. And the paper might be 2 weeks old. I think that's the mark of a really good newspaper, and that's what we're trying to do now. We're not trying to tell you what happened last year about the baseball game. You have ESPN and a whole bunch of other sources to find out what the score is. But what we can tell you that you might not find out in the white heat moment of a game being over is what was the critical play or what happened that you really didn't see. And that's what we try to do is context and analysis.
So it seems like we're shifting away from newspaper companies, media companies that own newspapers. That's accurate.
I would say that we've gone past that point. We have investors who, sort of see newspapers as a business as opposed to a public trust, and I think that that's a difficult place where we are right now. Where, profit's not a dirty word, but it is about money. And I think I'm really looking forward to the next stage we get to where it's not just about profit. I think that's what's so exciting about Bezos owning the Washington Post. He's a super rich guy. Profit is not, the most important thing to him. Amazon doesn't even really make money yet. And so he's able to sort of do with the Washington Post what he thinks is the right thing, not just what's going to make money for him. And so I think in some ways we're all sort of waiting and hoping that he's going to come up with the right formula that will protect the resources to do great journalism, and at the same time, make money and be able to pay journalists for the work that they do.
So shifting back to your post.
My post is the post.
You guys had a lot of news hitting, and obviously it was the worst thing one you hit it back well. So I want to talk about pot, and
Everybody wants to talk about pot.
especially with you guys, because of the way you guys been covering that all there. We've had conversations a little bit about how you cover that, touch on that.
Well, basically everybody in my newsroom, and our newsroom was probably a total of about 170 people, and every single person at the newspaper, if you were to talk to them individually, would tell you that is the number one story, it's the number one priority for us. It's the biggest story, not just in Denver or Colorado or the United States, it's the biggest story in the world. And so everyone knows that everyone's expected to contribute to our understanding of the issue, what's happening on a regulatory basis, on a scientific research basis, what's happening on a cultural basis, how it's being used for medicinal purposes, for culinary purposes. We write about all aspects of it. We created a website called the Cannabist, which is doing very, very well. We're getting about 1.5 million page views, and hope to build that to 2 million and 3 million. And yes, there are revenue implications for that. I mean, we have dispensaries and pipes and accessories and all kinds of commerce that's happening around the marijuana issue. We're also looking at the criminal justice implications, so it is a huge story. And we're on the cutting edge of that. Colorado and Washington State, you're beginning to sort of see that happening in other places in the world, Uruguay, places like that. So we're trying to understand a story that's fast unfolding right before our eyes. And there are people who are concerned about all kinds of issues. I was talking to Lindsay about this a little bit ago. I mean, we're also writing about the whole addiction issue related to marijuana. And I do a webcast show where I'm able to bring guests on, and we talk about a wide range of issues. And I would say 4 or 5 of the shows I've done in the last year have been about recreational marijuana. And I just had a person on who's sort of an expert on addiction and told me a number of wonderful things that are on my show, which is denverpost.com/ from the editor's desk. Check that out. But one of the things he told me was that the number one addiction that they treat young people for is marijuana addiction. Number one for adults is alcohol. And there's a lot of research that's being done based in Colorado that's actually being peer reviewed, so we're looking at what the behavior is of people who are, using marijuana. And it's really interesting. One of the things he told me, and we still have to wait to see what the actual research paper says, but he told me that on average, a person in Colorado who uses recreational marijuana smokes 5 times a day. That's an issue. They're smoking, in the morning, they're smoking before they go to work, they're smoking at lunchtime, they're smoking when they get off work, and they're smoking at home. That's an issue that has some really broad implications because, particularly for young people, their brains aren't really fully formed, the frontal lobe, the judgment area of the brain is not fully formed, and it's really adversely affected by marijuana as it would for some other drugs. And we're about explaining all those implications to people, not being an advocate for any particular side. We really want to be an honest broker on sort of what this new frontier really is going to mean to all aspects of our society. That's what we're doing, and we get a lot of attention for it.
So, you kind of have to how to regulate it and decide to tell it. Are you giving your audience a way where they can find out more about weed itself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're telling them everything that we can possibly tell you about weed. We actually have mapped all the locations where you can legally purchase it, where you can purchase it for medicinal purposes, where you can purchase it for recreational purposes. We explain to you what the cost differences are. Medicinal marijuana is probably like about $180 to $200 an ounce. Recreational marijuana is somewhere in the $350 to $400 an ounce, and part of that is because of the taxation on it. The governments are making a lot of money off of it, which is part of the whole reason why legalization is really happening. But then we also, we have our own sort of version of Rotten Tomatoes, where people who actually use it actually rate different strains of marijuana and talk about the medicinal and other sort of byproducts of it. So it's a very, very, very complete website, and the line we have to walk is the line between sort of writing about something in a journalistic way and promoting something, and that's a very careful line that we walk and we talk about every day at the newspaper.
Criticism that maybe on the side.
There's some people that say there's too much pot in the newspaper, to contribute to what they see. It's sort of like, if you see something, say something. If you see something, you say something to our marijuana editor or what have you, and we'll make a decision about whether we write about it. But we try to be careful about how much marijuana news we actually put in the newspaper. We certainly don't want to be in a situation where we have a story on the front page and the Metro front and the business front and the features front. We don't ever want to do that. And we've had a couple of times where we've had 3 stories in the newspaper about marijuana, and we hear about it from particularly our older readers.
I know here in Athensburg, with the newspaper, when we have a newspaper, like when the sheriff was indicted last semester, there was a huge story about an alleged rape court shoot. And we had some difficult decisions to make about what we should put on our front page. So maybe you can speak to that problem that newspapers should sound big.
Well, you know, I think that the special place we have in our community is that we actually know the communities. I'm a part of Denver, Colorado. I'm a part of Colorado. So I think one of the advantages that I have is I pick up the telephone and get screened at. I look at the emails. We do engagement efforts in auditoriums like this where people are able to ask me questions or criticize certain things and stories and approaches that we take. So I think I have a sense of sort of what the community standard and expectation is for how we would approach our journalism. So, for example, when we have a school shooting, like I automatically know, I just know that the perpetrator's pictures can't be anywhere close to the victims. That in fact it's probably better if I put that picture inside. If we do a profile of the shooter, put it inside the paper. I mean, that person cannot share that space with those victims. I know that because it's the third rail for us. I know that if we write about immigration, that I'm going to hear from a certain part of our audience. Doesn't mean we don't do the stories, but in making a decision about how we play it, what the headline says, and what the photograph says, that I'm aware of sort of what the community expectation and reaction is going to be based on how we play stories and how they think we filter the stories. And no matter how many times I say, you know, we don't have to go biased about this, that, and the other, you know, how you play a story, what kind of headline, how big it is, and that kind of stuff, it sends a signal whether it's intentional or not. So I try, when I'm deciding what to put on page 1, how to play it, how many stories are associated with the subject, I'm trying to think about what my audience needs, what it needs, what it expects, and how it's going to receive it. I do. And it doesn't mean I don't do stories that are going to create blowback. It's just that I kind of go in with my eyes wide open. And I always answer the phone. If you call me up, I talk to you. If you send me an email and you're civil, I respond. And it's amazing the number of people that start out yelling at me, who in the end say, you know, I'm going to keep my subscription because I appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Another big story, last Royal movie theater shooting. So can you kind of explain how that was, or both? Because you're the editor of the newspaper, but you obviously have to give people that information right away. So how that went, and how you thought about what we did.
So, first, there are a lot of people on our staff who knew people who were in that theater that night. They know people that died. I mean, I had editors crying in their office. I mean, basically unable to function. So it was really close to home. A number of our people had been around for Columbine, and it was just painful to see it happening. And there were people just stumbling around saying, "Not again! I can't believe this." And it took a while for people to sort of get their heads straight and realize we had a very, very big story to cover. You know, one of the things that happened for us is the shooting actually happened at 12:37 Friday morning. So our paper had already been put to bed. So the paper that landed on your doorstep at 6 a.m. had no information whatsoever about the shooting. So we tweeted out our first confirmation that shots had been fired in the theater. You know, people had been taken out. There were some people wounded and perhaps some people dead. We didn't actually confirm that first tweet until 1:30 or 1:40, a full hour later. It was just complete chaos, just getting to the scene, waking people up and getting them going. It just took a long time, but it took long enough. And then we wanted to be careful about what we were tweeting out, and the whole world was watching. And then, you know, for us, I mean, we've really been working in the sphere of digital reporting and using all the tools available to us, video, you know, still photos, social media, that kind of stuff, and our people really swung into action. And for the first 30 hours of that story, from 12:37 a.m. Friday morning, all day Friday, all morning Saturday until the paper landed on your doorstep at 5 or 6 a.m., we were completely digital in our reporting. You know, you can follow all of our tweets and have a complete understanding of sort of moment-by-moment developments in that story. We pushed out a lot of stuff by social media. We did video. We shared some of the video with our television partners. Our videos of television production to high quality standards. You know, we did lots of photo galleries. You know, our traffic for the first 30 hours of that story broke all records.
And that was a award-winning
Yeah, we won the Pulitzer for that.
How monumental was that when it was just 30 hours of digital?
Well, it wasn't just 30 hours. I mean, you know, what we submitted for the Pulitzer was, I think, the first 5 days of coverage. So it was from Friday morning until the arraignment on Tuesday of James Holmes. You know, winning the Pulitzer for that is bittersweet. I mean, as I said, you know, to my staff and to others, you know, if we could trade that story not happening for the Pulitzer, we could trade that. You know, we don't want to see our community go through that kind of pain. But if you do have a cover a story like that, you want to cover it at the highest level, do the best job possible, serve your community as well as you can. And what we tried to really do in telling that story was to not just talk about the horror and the tragedy, but to talk about heroism, to talk about the selfless sacrifices that people made to save other people in that theater, to, you know, cauterize their wounds and things of that nature, to carry them to the ambulance, because the ambulances couldn't get to the theater, right? There were so many people in cars, and the rules sort of, you know, in emergency sort of care is, you know, the people who are closest to you, you take them to the hospital. That's for walking wounded. They were able to walk 100 feet or 200 feet from the theater. The ambulances took them to the hospital. The people who were most critically wounded were being carried to the hospital by you and I. And by police who put them in the back of their police cars and took them away. We told all those stories. And, you know, we did a special section on something called Heroes Among Us. There was this girl who was 15 years old who carried a guy that was like 170 pounds out of that theater. I mean, the guys described her as having the strength of 100 men. Those are great stories to tell, and sort of helping the community understand that it has great humanity in times of crisis is a huge healing thing that we did, and we're just very, very proud of what we performed on that story. And the money that came with the awards that we won, we donated that to the victims of the Aurora shooting.
I want to talk a little bit about every time on Pulitzer.
If I tell you stuff about that, I might have to kill you. No, go ahead.
All right, next up. But just want to explain how does one even get involved in being a part of it?
You know, the Pulitzer Board is sort of like a secret society, like Skull and Bones or whatever kind of, you know, secret societies you have here, sororities, you know, secret handshakes and all that. But you actually don't even know that you're being vetted for that board. So you either get an invitation or you don't. It's really a self-selection process. So those of us on the board, you know, when generally every year 1 or 2 people go off the board, we look around and try to bring in 1 or 2 replacements. And those people don't even know that they're being vetted. I mean, and we do a very thorough sort of background check on looking at sort of what their interests are. You know, are they good readers? Do they like theater? Do they like music? You know, sort of how eclectic are they? You know, what's their level of collegiality? You know, if they lose an argument, do they pout? Do they get angry? Do they shout? If they do, they can't be a member of our club. I mean, one of the things you have to be able to do is you have to be able to argue effectively, and you really do learn to argue very well. These are, and I'll talk a little bit about the background on the board, but these are very smart people who use words very well. They're reason, and you don't always win. And you have to be able to go on to the next subject. So there are 18 people on the board generally, 5 are non-journalists. They tend to be, the non-journalists tend to be academics. They themselves have won Pulitzer Prizes for history or fiction or drama or what have you. They're very, very smart. And we served for a total of 9 years. We meet twice a year, once in November, and we actually meet and debate who's going to win the prizes in April. There are about 13 or 14 journalism categories, and then there are 5 book categories. So it's fiction, nonfiction, history, fiction, nonfiction, history, biography, and poetry. And there are 3 finalists in each of those 5 categories. And usually we read all 15 of those books between beginning of December when we meet, usually our fidelity to what's good. It's the greatest meritocracy I've ever been a part of. You know, when our work was up for consideration, I leave the room, and believe me, you know, we've had finalists that didn't win the Pulitzer, and they expect me to come in that room, wipe away the tears. In fact, it'd be better if I didn't cry, and get in there and get on to the next point. And you learn to do that. So if you win, you know that you won on the merits, and if you lose, you know you weren't good enough. And it's just great to see it up close, and I'm just very, very proud to have been a part of that process.
What do you learn about journalism by being part of that process?
What you learn about journalism is that there is a lot of great work that's being done by all different sized newspapers, and here's what I just tell people. If you do good work, it will be rewarded, and that great journalism doesn't have a whole lot to do with numbers. It doesn't. You know, you see newspapers or news organizations that have 3 or 4 people on their staff. You see news organizations like the New York Times that has 1,000. And both sides of newspapers and all in between win Pulitzer Prizes.
What was your role as co-chair, and what kind of, do you lead the debate and discussion?
Yeah, you lead the debate and discussion, and your job, you know, your 9th year on the board, you're the chairman, and if somebody else was appointed in your class, it was Tom Friedman and I, Tom Friedman from the New York Times, we were appointed the same year, so in our 9th year, we shared the chairman responsibilities. And part of our job is to make sure that we get the work done in a timely fashion, and that we make sure that everybody has what they need to sort of make the judgments that they need to make. But we also spend that year looking forward, trying to think about the big issues, like should we allow magazines to be part of the competition, and should we allow video to be part of the photo aspects of the competition? You know, do we let online publications in? Do we let new verticals participate? And I think that we've been very good. You know, sort of integrating multimedia into entries, allowing video to be part of the process, allowing Slate and other non-newspaper entries into the competition. I think that we've been right not letting TV stations be a part of it for the moment. I think we've been right not allowing magazines to be part of it for the moment. You know, everything changes, but you know, in time, who knows what's going to happen? But I think that we've absorbed the technological advancements that have made journalism better, and we've sort of rebuffed the idea that all comers can participate, because the Pulitzers were designed to promote a certain kind of journalism. And what news organizations, daily news organizations do is completely different what a monthly magazine does. I mean, a newspaper's got to be able to do high-end stuff while taking care of the basics and trying to balance the daily responsibility with the idea of doing great enterprise investigative reporting, where the New Yorker hires the best freelancers in the world, and they can spend a month or 2 on one story. A daily newspaper, they come out every day, you can't do it, and you can't equate those things quite yet. So we wrestle with the big issues for that year and try to make refinements that sort of take into account technological advancements, changes in the business, but we try to be sort of like the Supreme Court, that you don't just sort of weave all over the road and change precedents willy-nilly, that you try to build on what the board before you did and try to be a good guardian of the prize, and that's sort of what we say. diverse. You know, there were, on various times during my 9 years, there were 3 African Americans there. We've got a Dominican on the board, a Puerto Rican playwright is on the board. I think 8 women are on the board. Men and women have been chairs. So very, very diverse group. You know, you have academics and we have journalists who are a part of that, and they represent that. So I mean, you could always be better. But really, what this is about is the richness of the arguments, and you know, and that includes a lot of different perspectives that aren't, you know, just raised by African Americans or women or Puerto Ricans or whatever. These are people that really deal in a diverse environment, and those arguments reflect a lot of different points of views that aren't always represented by the makeup of the board. It's a remarkable thing. I don't want to make it seem like it's perfect, because the best journalism is not always there. The best journalism doesn't always win. The way it works is you have to muster, a piece of work has to muster a majority vote. And people have all different kinds of tastes. And so, you know, something could win a Pulitzer with an 8-7 vote. And that's about as razor close as you can get. You know, one person going to the bathroom or having to sit out to change the whole dynamic of that vote. So I'm not going to sit here and say the absolute best journalism has always won, but we've always done the best job that we could do.
I think everyone would probably agree with that. When you are working with a group of people to try to achieve something, it's best that group of people bring something different to the plate, to the table, rather. Do you see that same type of environment in the many newsrooms you've been in, or do you think there's still some work to go as far as diversity in newsrooms?
But there's a lot of work to be done in terms of, you know, representing, you know, the real diverse makeup of the communities that we cover. You know, when you go through a recession like what we've gone through in this business, and a restructuring through bankruptcies and things like that, I mean, it's sad to say, but the first casualty is really diversity. And for a lot of different reasons, but, you know, when you're, you know, sort of, you know, reducing staff and doing layoffs and things like that, you can't replace people if, you know, 15 or 20 or 30% of your staff is a diverse staff, and over time you lose a third of that staff, you're just not going to be as diverse as you were when you started. So we have to work really, really hard to sort of replicate that. And I think the way you do that is, you know, you let the community come in. You do crowdsourcing. You find a way to get those perspectives. You know, you open the door wider when people want to come in and complain about what you're not doing well. You really do want to pay attention to what those emails say, and you've got to have a thick skin when people say, look, you know, I expect better on these issues than what you're doing. You have to sort of internalize and reflect that, and I try to do that. But, you know, we're not as good as we were in terms of diversity and representation, but, you know, as long as I'm there, we're going to try to, you know, have that door as wide open as possible, and we do. And my staff cares about this deeply, so, you know.
So you've been kind of all over the place. You know, you were state editor at Diva for a bit, and then moved to the Boston Globe. You were managing editor. What was that experience like over there?
You know, first of all, it's just great to be able to go to your hometown and work in journalism. It was really great. I mean, I got a chance to go back to my junior high school and do stories of teachers that were, you know, going to be teaching in a desegregated environment for the first time, and how nervous my teachers were about having white students in the classroom for the first time. It was just a remarkable time for me to go back. I was like 26 years old. And, you know, my mom was calling me up saying, oh, son, I read your story on the front page today. I was like, thanks, Mom. It was great. And, you know, I started editing when I was 28 years old. And, you know, basically the person who gave me that opportunity and he really was. He used to critique what I did every morning. I would come in a little bit early, sit in his office, and he would say, you did this well, you did that well, you should have done this, you should have done that. And I internalized that, and even today, 25 years after I first started, I still quote Bob Magruder. I still quote him. I remember what he told me, and now I tell the people that I mentor, this is how you do things, this is what you do on a breaking story, these are the kinds of things you do to develop people. And the basic rule I have, and we can take questions from the audience. The basic thing I tell people when I promote them to being an editor working for me is that your number one job is to create more stars than you found when you started. And if you do that, you're going to be fine with me.
I guess one last question I want to ask is, if your old boss, you still go today, what do you think everyone in this room should still look forward to reading?
From me?
Yeah.
From me? I think that journalism is about people. It's about caring about people. It's about, trying to change the conditions that could lead to a better society. I think you have to have a 30,000-foot view of things. And I go back to what I just said, that if you are a leader of people in this business, you have to be committed to their development. So, I just tell people, it's like, if there were 2 stars in your department when you took over, when you leave, there should be 4 or 5. And that's how I'm going to judge you. You can't just ride the same 2 horses you found when you went in the barn. You got to create some other race horses. You got to create some other stars. And that should be true for you in any profession that you're in. Is, if you're in charge of other people, it's not about yourself. And getting ahead on the backs of people who work for you and contribute to the enterprise is making room for them to be stars too. So that's what I was saying. All right. Anybody have questions?
Dr. Stewart?
What was the impact of the Rocky Mountain News going out of business in the Coast?
Well, for a lot of people, the question was, what was the impact of the Rocky Mountain News going out of business? Rocky Mountain News closed in February 2009. I think first and foremost, there were a lot of journalists who were married to folks who were at Rocky Mountain News. I wouldn't say it was a quarter of my staff, but it was a decent number. So we hated to see those journalists go. One of the things that happened is there was just more pressure on us. And one of the things I kept telling people is like, this is not a time for us to go to sleep. It's not a time for us to go to what we call a line-down attitude. Somebody gives us a tip and we go, oh yeah, we'll get to it tomorrow. No. I mean, if somebody gives us a tip, I'm counting the minutes until we check it out. We have got to be aggressive. We can't afford to go to sleep. The expectations are really high. And, so the pressure was extreme. In the immediate aftermath of the Rocky Mountain News closed, we basically inherited all their readers. We doubled our circulation overnight. So, when the Rocky went down, we were about 250,000. They were about 250,000. We probably ended up being about 480 the next day. And, that first year we held on to about 70% of the Rocky people until they recycled through and had to renew, and then they began to drift. One of the things is the Rocky was a tabloid, we're a broadsheet, and the two just don't meet. I mean, people that like the tabloid, they love the tabloid, and over time, they're just not going to accept the broadsheet. And they just disappeared. I don't know where they went. I don't know if they went to television. I don't know if they dropped out of news consumption altogether. I don't know if they went to the free website, but, we're back to where we were, or a little less, actually. We went back to about 250 in about a year and a half, and then we've steadily been going down since then. And I think we're probably at about, probably 200,000, 190 now. We miss the Rocky. I miss their scrappiness. I mean, I think there's some mythology that's grown up around how great they were. I mean, we had our share of beat downs on the Rocky. But we photography juggernaut. They were the photo newspaper, one of the best photo staffs in the country, and now we're one of the best photo staffs in the country. So we benefited from that. We benefited.
No, something that you said that I really respected and has really stuck with me is that when the Aurora shootings happened, that was at 12:37 a.m., but you guys didn't wait to tweet anything until an hour or so after. And that kind of like reminded me of when Sandy Hook happened. I was driving home from Athens and I was just seeing updates on Twitter and things that were being falsely reported, just people wanting to get the news out there, not really caring too much about the community like you guys say that you do. And that's like one of the main things that I'm concerned about our generation of journalists, is that social media is kind of turning us into a generation that wants to get news out there as fast as they can, no matter if the facts are being checked or not. Do you see that as a problem, or what can we do? What can we do to?
You got to hold, as they say in Braveheart. You have to hold. You have to hold. I mean, like that's what I tell them. They're not always constantly. Can we put it on? No. Hold. How do you know? Hold. And I think the longer you've been in the marketplace, the more credibility you have, the greater your obligation to get it right. If we make a mistake, just Dewey Beach Truman, they'll talk about it forever. If it's some blogger that did it, nobody knows who that person is. It just evacuates into the atmosphere. But we're really, really proud in the Aurora shooting coverage. We didn't get a single fact wrong. We just didn't get a single fact wrong. I remember one day, I came into the office and the New York Post, I think, had reported that James Holmes, who was the shooter, in jail was running around bragging that he killed people and he didn't really care and he was spitting on the guards. And I remember calling up one of my editors saying, why do we know that? Well, the reason we didn't have it is because it wasn't true. And the farther you are away from ground zero, the more irresponsible you can be. I mean, the Post is irresponsible about a lot of things. They didn't pay a price for having that story wrong. If we didn't have that story on the front page, they would still be talking about us today, and we wouldn't have won the Pulitzer. That would have been a mistake that would wipe out anything that we had done. So it's important to be careful. Philip Seymour Hoffman, and this is something I just think your generation has to deal with. Because of social media, Philip Seymour Hoffman's death from an overdose of heroin in New York a few weeks ago, I mean, that was reported so instantly on social media that his kids didn't even know he was dead. I mean, you just can't do that. You just have to sort of say, wait, what about his kids? What about his wife? What about his mom? What about his dad? What is it about this that we have to get this out before we even actually know what all the facts are? And I just think that basically the way it should work is the closer you are to ground zero, where an event happens, the higher the bar should be. The higher it should be. And if you behave that way, then the media outlets on the ripple, they have to be more careful because the primary source of that information is holding. You just have to hold. And they take greater risks if they want to put that information out there. I'm a big believer in we don't publish it until we know it. And then we think about, do you right to know that Danny is dead before you did? And, that's the kind of stuff that I think about all the time when we're deciding what to publish, when to publish, and how much. Yes?
Okay, I wanted to ask you about the Cannabist website. That seems like kind of a crazy idea to essentially launch like a spin-off publication to fully cover every possible angle you can think of on a certain topic. Is there any sort of precedent for that? Did you model that off anything? Like, how did you arrive at that?
Well, we have a separate website we call Reverb, which is our music website. And if you go to the Cannabist or you go to Reverb, the page view comes to the Denver Post. It's sort of like a vanity website. But the bones of it goes back to denverpost.com. We modeled it on what we've done, and we modeled it on the fact that we knew we wanted to do blanket coverage, but we didn't want to have that overwhelm our news site. You know, like, if you're gonna do 64 questions about cannabis, we don't want that to be in position 1 on our news website. Like, we understand that, you know, 40% of the people in Colorado voted against legalization of marijuana. They don't agree with that. They don't want to see all that stuff. They want it to go away. So we had to try to figure out a way where we could be comprehensive without being overwhelming and not creating the impression that it's marijuana all the time in Colorado, because it's not. That would be a distortion of things. But for people who really wanted to be on top of a significant cultural, social, political event in this country, here's everything you want to know about it. You can find it in one place. You know, all the news is there, whether it's locally generated or came from across the country or anywhere in the world. And you just know, if you go to the Cannabist, you can find out what the NFL commissioner is saying about whether or not medical marijuana is going to be permitted to be used by players, that kind of thing. So that's what we did.
How do you post on
How often do we post on that? You know, our goal is to post like 10 times a day on that. You know, if we can, we try. Between a combination of what's on the wire and what we generate on our own, yeah. So we do a combination of video, photo galleries, stories. It's quite a remarkable thing. And nobody thought that I had the guts to do it. So when we said we were looking for a marijuana editor, I mean, I had hundreds of people. And like, they were like, why do I have to find out about this on the Jon Stewart show? I said, because really, we're not going to give you that job. Okay, that's why. You know, really, I'm not talking to dudes like, you know, I know I'm qualified to be your marijuana editor. I served 10 years in jail for I was like, no, so no. But it got us a lot of publicity. A lot of people were paying attention. In some ways, it made it more acceptable to do it. You know, like Saturday Night Live, doing jokes and all this and stuff like that. My marijuana editor was so like a hippie. He got all clean, got his haircut, got a collared shirt, started wearing real shoes instead of Birkenstocks. I mean, it was just like amazing. But we made the right choice. He's done a really, really fabulous job for us. He's a great ambassador for us so much. Yeah.
So, being a Colorado native for my whole life, for 19 years, I first want to start with thanking the great coverage that you guys do, because you guys really did a really good job, especially with the Aurora shooting, because my mom was involved at the hospital at Ground Zero. But how do you take something like a big-scale shooting, kind of like the Aurora was, and how much it shook the community as opposed to the Arapahoe High School shooting, which happened in my community, which wasn't as big of a shooting because only one person died. How does the newsroom change from something that goes to being world news to just a small?
So, you know, in the beginning, you don't really know, right? You don't really know. And again, as soon as the Arapahoe shooting happened, which I think was like on December 21st or something, we're like, it's 4 days before Christmas. You can't be serious. You can't be serious. And we just flooded it on. We sent everybody. And then what you wait for is to sort of get information back to find out what the journalists say. And once we realized that, you know, it was not as devastating as we feared, you know, you have to be honest. You have to have real conversations. You have to say, this is not Columbine. This is not Aurora. And we have to sort of calibrate our response. Like, we have to partly be thinking that our community can't take this, okay? So acting like it's the end of the world, you know, is not the right thing. So once we did that, we pared back the number of stories we were doing. We pared back the space. We had opened up the newspaper. I was like, you know, we need 8 pages. And then, you know, once we began to get the factual information, we pared that back to 4 pages, so we could accommodate our photo report. We basically took the whole front page, we only did 2 stories, and then we spent a lot of time trying to reflect the community response to this. And there were about 20 people that participated in this discussion, and we came up with what I think is just a tremendous headline, again, period. It's one of the best headlines live or seen on the story, and it was a really dramatic sort of expression of the community's frustration that, here we are, these many years after Columbine, and we still are going through this. It was really an expression of collective expression of frustration. And sometimes you, as a news organization, have to represent that. And we did. And then, we began to pare that back more the second day, the third day. We never lost sight of Claire, who was the girl who was shot in the head. And we were one of the greatest headlines ever when she ultimately passed. It was something like, Claire's light shines on. It was really, I think we were very much in touch with the sentiment of the community in dealing with that story. So that's how we did it. Yes?
When there's a horrible tragedy, I know, like with gun shooting, I know there's a lot of talk about like gun control and like violence bans and putting security in public places. At what point is that story acceptable?
At what point did that story what?
I know, like, you don't want to put it out while there's a tragedy going on. Like, during Aurora, when you didn't know what was going on, you didn't want a gun shooting. So at what point is that story, in your eyes, acceptable to put out?
It's acceptable to do it the first day, depending on what the volume of coverage is. If we can get to it. Aurora was so big, we just couldn't get to it. There were 12 people dead in Aurora and 58 or 78 injured. And each one of those people was a story for us. So it was just impossible to get to any sort of enterprise issues about gun control or theater security and all that kind of stuff. We were busy trying to recreate what happened in that theater that night. And that took the efforts of many reporters talking to numerous sources and double checking information. And we produced that TikTok, is what we call it, the very next day. So, it probably took about 2 or 3 days. I think it depends on sort of how many resources you have, how much time you have. But what we want to do is stay close to the news, as close as we can before we, step back and start talking about larger thematic issues. You want to cover the news. You want to answer all the questions about what happened, what the facts are, try to control some rumors. And then you begin to sort of broaden your coverage. And certainly within the first 2 or 3 days, you want to begin to ask some of the big thematic questions. And that's generally what we do. There's a formula for how we do it. I think that we do it really well. And, that formula works for us. I think we serve the community really well. But you don't want to start standing up on a soapbox the first day. How could this happen? What didn't we see? No, this is not about blaming anybody. This is really about, trying to get as many perfect facts to people in real time as possible. And then we get a chance to sort of peel the onion in subsequent days. And it seems appropriate.
Covering such a progressive state like Colorado, and you talk about sort of fostering to the community and the people, how do you balance your coverage on sort of bigger issues, statewide, nationwide issues to specific Denver or sort of small town local?
Well, that's a really interesting question. One of the things that makes Colorado so interesting is that it, in some ways, is unique. It's like 33% Republican, 33% Democratic, and 33% unenrolled or independents. And independents are becoming the largest sector of our politics. So sort of looking at issues through that prism really forces us to pursue stories in a way that not a lot of places are forced to do. So that's how we really approach it, is that we want to speak to all sides of the audience. We want to have credibility with all three. We want to know what's happening, and particularly what's happening with the independents. Because you can actually envision a time if our politics continues the way it is, where 60% of the people are independents. They're not affiliated with any party. And what does that mean? Like, what happens to primaries, you're going to have some caucuses and things of that nature. So politics are really interesting, and then policy becomes very interesting. And what we try to do is, really understand our community. We know that immigration is like a huge issue in Colorado, huge. And there are others that sort of follow, but that's a huge issue for us. Dream Act is a huge issue for us. The environment, Keystone, huge issue for us. Things of that nature. So you really want to know what your community is, what your state is, and the Interior Department is bigger for us than Health and Human Services. It's huge for us. So we try to pay attention to those kinds of issues, and through those issues, that's how we start to watch.
Any questions?
Just one last question.
Okay.
What, do you have conversations with the editor?
Go talk to the editorial board. Can you help me get this endorsement? I don't do that. So when I first came to the Post in 2002, the previous editors had been a member of the editorial board. And so in my first week, politicians who were running, for the U.S. Senate and stuff, they were like bogarting their way into my office. And I was like, wow, it's really impressive. They want to meet me in my first week. And at the end of the session, it would be like, I hope I can count on you for support. I was like, excuse me? Well, they said, you have a vote on the editorial board, don't you? And I said, I do. And then I went and looked at the paper, and at the bottom it said, members of the editorial board have my name on it. I said, immediately, take me off. Take me off. I don't want to have any more conversations with politicians or other people in my office pitching me, in effect, and saying at the end, I hope I can count on your vote. No, you can't. And so I try to make sure that I'm as pure as possible when I say I never try to influence that editorial. What I have done is on some of our big public service stuff, like when we were doing, kids who were dying in the system after being, exposed to human services, and they weren't stopping these kids from being killed by their parents or what have you, or, looking at the deficiencies of the parole system after a parolee killed the prisons chief. I said to our editorial board director, look, we're doing a huge series on parole that starts on Sunday. Here are the stories. Why don't you go home and read them, because it's going to take you, a day or two. Why don't you go ahead and read those so that you can be in a better position to write an intelligent editorial. But I didn't say what to write or anything like that. I just gave my heads up, because of just the sheer volume and the importance of what we were doing. But that's it. I don't have anything to do with them, and they don't really have anything to do with me.
Do you read the editorials regularly?
Yes. I didn't always do that, but I do now. I think it's kind of important for me to have a sense of what the newspaper's voice is on a particular issue in the community, so that I can kind of steer clear of some minefields in terms of language and things of that nature. I try to do that, and I go on radio and I do interviews. If a media critic calls me up, I always respond. I never go off the record. I want to be as responsive as possible. I want to be as straightforward about how we decide what we decide as I possibly can. And generally, that's worked for me. I mean, these media critics, they're looking to beat up the life or whatever. They're looking to, sort of take us down. But I find that when you're straightforward and you have a reputation for not having lied to them, and they do a good job of getting your quotes accurately, things tend to work out pretty well. So that's what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of as a closing thought here, being a savvy senior, close to graduation, knowing that there are a number of younger students in the audience, I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to kind of build off some of Mr. Moore's points and say that if you you are in this business because you actually care about people and you want to tell the stories that need to be told and reveal those issues, you have to get involved and do a huge body of work. You have to practice journalism. You have to get out there, write the stories, take those photos, do the research, and practice journalism. Now, kind of my biased opinion, of course, I think the Post is a great place to do that. We have a paper every day, but there are a great number of other